they needed a Saturday boy. So I started as a Saturday boy at the age of 30.
A what?
A Saturday boy. So they just went in on a Saturday and, helped out in the shop. And after 6 months, a full-time position became, available. And here I am, 17 years later. Feels like every single second of 17 years. But no, it's been... I know. I mean, it's not a job, is it? It's a vocation. It
is, yeah.
It's a calling. So
I love that Saturday boy. Well, thank you, Mr. Dickens. I appreciate the job, even if it is for just one day of the week.
And it's for one groat every month. It was but it was a great introduction. I learned on the job.
I'm guessing that you collect natural history. You're a member of the Linnean Society.
Yeah, that has really come about since I started being a book dealer. When I started working at Sotheran's, those were the kind of books that I ended up gravitating towards. So yeah, the Linnean thing. I've been a fellow now since 2013, and that's as a result of dealing in natural history books for that many years.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's a case where being a book dealer leads you down paths you didn't expect to go down, really, because I haven't got, my degree isn't in the natural sciences. I've got a literature degree. But once I started reading about Darwin and getting Darwin stuff in, and that leads on to this, that, and the other, it's fascinating.
About 2 years ago, I picked up a botany collection, and I went to the person's home, and I started taking the books that I thought it had some value. And sometimes books just speak to you. There was this little tiny book, 16 pages, maybe 3 inches by 4 inches. And I just grabbed it and said, well, let me look this one up. I don't think it's worth anything. Went home, found out it was the first time that a plant had been described from North America, from the New World.
Okay, that's interesting.
It was published in 1612 in Paris, only 16 pages long, and I had 2 universities vying to snap it up. And it's amazing once you start diving into books, the things you're going to find. Do you find that books speak to you when you walk into a house call?
Yeah, sometimes you walk in and you find in one house, you find one book that you think, that's amazing, I've got to have that. And nothing else would have spoken to you like that at all. But
Easter eggs.
Exactly. But one of the things that got me into natural history books is I went into somewhere and they had a copy of Gerard's Herbal, which I had to look at, and found a picture of a potato. And I thought, that's a great picture of a potato. And then found out, which I didn't, I was new to this whole world, that was the first depiction in an English book of a potato. I just thought, that's fantastic. And, it's that sort of thing that hooks you in.
Right.
Who doesn't want the first ever picture of a potato on their shelves? I know I do. So, yeah, things sing to you sometimes.
They sure do. Here's Lee. Good morning, Lee.
Hi there.
She probably can't hear us because she's not looking up.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Well, I imagine that was worth a pretty farthing.
Yeah, that was. Even that is probably about 15 years ago. But yeah, that was.
Did you put it with a collector or an institution?
That went to a private collector who is also very pleased to have the first ever picture of a potato. It's a fellowship of potato lovers. But yeah.
Now, do you make a conscious decision up front when you're selling material what you try to put into university libraries or cultural libraries as opposed to sell to a private collector, or is it off to the highest bidder?
Highest bidder. There you do find things where you think, I know exactly which university that belongs in because I know what their collection is. And obviously, if you have something like that, you'll try and place it there first. But, I'll sell to anybody.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Lee, can you hear us? We can't hear you, Lee.
Technical hitch.
A couple of years ago, I picked up 2 manuscript notebooks by Gregory Corso. I call him the fourth beat after Kerouac and Ginsberg. And anyway, and he wrote these manuscript notebooks on his first visit to Greece on his very first day to Greece, and he filled it up with drawings and poetry that eventually got published. And I put it out there on the Tuesday Ex Libris list.
Oh yeah.
And a private collector picked it up in 5 minutes. Within an hour, I had calls from Yale and Harvard and Princeton also looking to buy it. And I really wanted it to go into an institution, but I just felt it was appropriate to go with the first phone call.
I think so. And, some private collections will in the end that they're going to end up in institutions in the end anyway. So, if you're selling to a good enough private collector, I think that's fine. And some of the private collections you see are better than anything you'll see in an institution in some cases. So,
for sure. How big is your staff? I was. This is really funny. I was combing through your website, and on your blog, there was one young lady named Katie.
Oh yeah,
and it said Katie Sotheran's contributor, and I thought her name was Katie Sotheran's making a contribution to the blog. I go, wow, this must be the great granddaughter of Henry Sotheran. Apparently not.
There are none of the Sotherans are left, I'm afraid. There are various people around the world who have the surname Sotheran who sometimes come in and visit, but they're not actually, members of the direct family. So the last Sotheran was killed in something like 1934 by an electric tram car, which is all very exciting. So none of those are left. But we've got probably, I think we've got 11 staff, but including sort of accountants and packers and whatever.
Sure.
So a fairly small team, but we cover a lot of bases. Everybody's got various interests that they can do. It's quite nice having a small team. It feels very sort of family-like, which is good.
Can
you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay. I noticed the name also, and not just Katie, but wasn't there a Henry that was listed as a contributor also?
Yeah, I think sometimes, because we've got this sort of overall name of Henry Sotheran, sometimes it just goes in as the contributor because we're not clever enough to make it do anything else. So no, we sometimes get phone calls for Henry Sotheran. Some salesmen are ring up and say, "Can I speak to Henry, please?" And you say, "Well, he died in 1793." So,
well, I have a question to add when you're asking questions, Ed, and that is, the website said that y'all started in 1760 something.
1761, yeah.
What kind of books were being sold then?
God, that is a really good question. I don't know.
You can think about it. We'll add that to the show. But let me ask you. We were talking about people come in, buy a book, and then immediately have it bound. In the early days, was that Henry Sotheran's modus operandi, that they also bound the books that people bought?
Yeah, I mean that was the classic sort of, that was the service. You would buy a book in a plain sort of brown wrapper and get it bound, and that is something that Southerns would offer. But I think it's also a thing where people would quite often buy something and take it to their own tame binder. But it was something that we did. When they started off, it was a book and wine dealer. So what I don't know is whether they sold more books than wine. We've got the problems with our archives is that they don't exist anymore because they were all blown up in the Second World War. So there are all kinds of these details that we'll never know because it's all been destroyed. So that is a really interesting question. I think when he started off, he was selling new books, and obviously ended up publishing. Southerns published quite a lot of books during the 19th century. So there was a real mix of, book dealer, book publisher, antiquarian dealer. I think it was all sort of in the mix at the beginning.
So Southerns was literally bombed in the Blitz.
Yeah. At that point, we had premises on the Strand. No, we didn't. We were in Sackville Street, and I think there was a second premise on the Strand, which is like a storage area, and that's what got bombed. So that our actual shop, thankfully, because we're still there, survived, but it was this extra sort of storage unit that got blitzed. So hundreds of years of stuff was just gone. So
what a shame.
Yeah. But that was London in the 40s. Unfortunately,
we had trouble remembering what we sold last week. So.
Oh yeah. No, exactly. So, yeah, ask me questions about 1761.
Well, I just wondered, if it was antiquarian stuff then, what were you selling? Leaves from the Gutenberg Bible or, other incunabula, or what were you selling?
From what you gather about the early Southerns, they would sell
anything.
Probably their own grandmothers. I mean, anything they could get their hands on. So, yeah. I think that there was the whole lot. So the antiquarian business quickly became the important part, because certainly by the time Sotheran started in York, and by the time it reached London in 1805, that was the main thrust of the business. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I don't see a countdown, but we're coming up on 9:30 here, so I think we ought to give it a go. What do you say, Lee?
Sure.
Okay. It's good with you?
Yeah, we've become real relaxed about this, Ed.
Let's see here. I'm traveling with my travel computer, and
you've got a good picture, though.
I'm sorry?
You've got a good picture.
Oh, good. This is just a little tiny computer. Anyways, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe, the book lovers' rendezvous, where our topics are priceless and the conversation is free. Thanks for joining us today. We're dropping this show on Facebook at 12:30 Eastern Time and on YouTube. Thank you. YouTube simultaneously. You can find the video of this show on both Facebook and YouTube, and throughout the week, 24/7, any time of the day, you can find Rare Book Cafe Raw on your favorite podcast channel. We've got with us today our co-host, Lee Linn. Hello, Lee.
Hi there, Ed. Good to see you.
Greetings, and Chris Saunders, the manager of Henry Sotheran's Antiquarian Bookstore in Piccadilly Square, London. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, how are you?
Chris, we're very excited to have you on the show today, but I have to tell you, I thought Henry Sotheran was going to be on.
Sorry, he couldn't come. He's been dead for 200 years, so I had to stand in.
All right, we'll cut him some slack.
That's kind.
All right, everybody. On the show today, Chris Saunders from Henry Sotheran Limited in London. We're going to have David Hess with the ever-popular Things Found in Old Books. Richard Mori will be returning to tell us about the Brimfield Fair and sitting on the porch and how business was and how the crowds were flowing. And we're just glad to have you. I want to let everybody know I'm at my son's house in Washington, D.C. with my portable computer today, and I'm heading on vacation in 2 days. Lee, you're in charge.
So I hear.
But I'm going to make an effort to log in wherever I happen to be. I'm going to be mostly in Greece in the Balkans, but they've got internet over there, so I ought to be able to check in once in a while.
Well, we'll be expecting you.
Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the managing director of Henry Sotheran Limited. I've been there for 17 years, which is an awfully long time to be doing anything, but it feels like my life. So we are a very old bookshop. We were founded in 1761, which makes us one of the oldest in the world as far as antiquarian book dealers go. We've been on the same premises in Sackville Street since 1936. So, we've been around a while. We started in York, so we've moved around bits of Britain, and now we're a nice, fairly general bookshop, but we've got specialities in travel and children's books and literature and natural history, and we do lots of prints as well. The prints have become very popular, and so there we are. We hope that we're friendly.
Physical store, just one physical store, Chris?
Just one store, yeah. We've been in the same, as I say, the same place as Sackville Street since 1936, and we've got a couple of floors there, and very nice it is too.
Yeah, I was checking out your website, and you say you're into prints now. You're doing a wonderful job with posters mostly, and other broadsides, I imagine. Anything else in the art world? I mean, there seems to be a bit of crossover between books and art and most anything printed sometimes. Yeah,
I mean, we're getting more into sort of fine art, really. I mean, what we do have is a huge holding of John Gould bird plates, because when he died in 1884, I think it was, Sotheran's bought his estate. So we've still got quite a lot of John Gould's prints, and we're working on some projects with modern artists to do some stuff with some of those plates. And we've held exhibitions of sort of fine artists and printmakers over the last couple of years. So yeah, there is a bit of crossover. I mean,
do you have your own print shop?
Well, with the print shop is sort of part of the bookshop. So yeah, we have a whole sort of department devoted to it, which is travel posters, John Gould, and sort of decorative stuff. But then we will have exhibitions, in cahoots with other people. Lots of Japanese art at the moment. Sorry?
Do you publish and print books?
We don't. We used to. We've got quite a proud history of publishing books in the 19th century. We did print a book about Elizabeth Gould a couple of years ago, which is just a selection of her best work for John Gould, which is the first thing we published for a while. So we dabble, but you go back to the 19th century, there are lots of very plush Henry Sotheran publications around.
Mm-hmm. Chris, on your website, I was noting your specialities. I love saying that, specialities.
Nice.
I was going to ask you if you sell books out of the boot of your car, just so that I could say boot of your car, but I
You don't get to say that very often, I imagine.
No. I was noticing your specialities, and one of them is modern fiction. Well, unfortunately, time marches on, and we all get a little bit older. Has the definition of modern fiction moved? Has it changed? Is there a period of or a specific date when modern fiction begins? And do you think that will change as time goes on?
Well, I think it has to change. I mean, we roughly say 1900 is the beginning of modern fiction. But the people who are buying things from the 1910s are very different from the people who are buying things from the 1960s. So obviously there's there are groups within that sort of definition. And it will change, because really modern fiction, I would say anything from sort of the 90s onwards, is not yet something that people are really collecting. I mean, it's too modern. So, that line of when modern fiction becomes collectible will always be moving back. So, I imagine people won't be collecting Sally Rooney books for another 40 years or something. It's always changing.
Who do you think is collectible out there?
At the moment, in terms of modern fiction, I mean, Ian Fleming is just perennial. James Bond stuff is always so popular. I mean, people like John le Carré.
How about a living author, Salmon Run?
Living author. We always do very well with Kazuo Ishiguro, actually. He always sells. John le Carré, as I was saying. A lot of the modern authors we find more difficult, especially those who came up in the 80s. We used to sell Julian Barnes and Martin Amis quite well, but not so much now for some reason, which is interesting. Zadie Smith, who's been a very big author recently.
White Teeth, my favorite.
Yeah, great book. I mean, she does sell, but the living ones, I hate to sound maudlin about it, but I think you really have to wait for people to die before they become really collectible. And I don't wish that on any of these people.
Well, let me throw this out there. I'll answer my own question. In my opinion, modern fiction begins with F. Scott Fitzgerald and The Great Gatsby, basically 1930, 1932, the Paris authors. I think that's going to be the new definition of modern fiction. I don't think it's reaching back to 1900. I would call 1900 antiquarian, but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, it will change as time progresses onward. So yeah, and all of these definitions are arbitrary, aren't they? So you have to choose a line and make that yours.
Chris, there's an anecdote about Henry Sotheran's in the Titanic. Would you care to share that with us?
It is possible that Sotheran's is directly responsible for the sinking of the Titanic.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Lawsuits be damned.
I hope it's not something that we can be sued for now, because it's quite a long time ago. But what happened was that Sotheran's and the binder Sandgorski collaborated on this thing called the Great Omar, which was designed to be the greatest new binding. So it was a fairly ordinary edition of Omar Khayyam, bound in the most incredible leather binding with jewels and gold and just everything dripping off it. It cost £1,000 in 1910, which was enough to buy several houses. And this is one of the reasons why people say the book was cursed, because no one would buy it. Even the King of England wouldn't buy it, because it's like, I'm not spending £1,000 on a book. So he ended up, in the end, Sotheran ended up selling it for less than half price to an American dealer called Gabriel Wells, very famous collector and dealer. And the only way to get it to him was to stick it on a ship. And the ship that they stuck it on was the Titanic. Now, any sailor will tell you that you do not take peacocks on ships because they are incredibly unlucky. And the rear board of the Great Omar binding was festooned with a very elaborate rendition of a peacock with its feathers. They stuck it on the Titanic. We all know what happened next. So yeah.
Do photographs exist of the book?
There are... No, not of the first one. There were a couple of other Great Omars that came after, which were photographed.
That one was never even photographed.
No.
Well, I think so James Cameron should have used that in the movie rather than some silly old diamond.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that the book doesn't feature in the film with Kate Winslet reading it as the ship goes down. I mean,
how cool.
Clearly that was the real story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, we are possibly responsible for one of the world's great disasters.
Very good story. Lee, do you have any other? Can you think of any other legends or curses associated with books?
Ooh, well, there's not specifically with the book, but with Macbeth. You know, with it, you don't say the title. It's the Scottish play. And it's going to be one of my books on my favorites list today. So I wasn't real sure whether I could refer to it by name or not.
We already have.
Well, see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, we already have.
I'm sure there will be a technical glitch and we will be kicked off the air.
Yes, Alan will take care of that. Yeah. I can't right off think of anything else.
All right, I'm looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
I'm worried now.
Chris, one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on the show today is because you, Henry Sotheran's, has such an entertaining Twitter page.
Yeah.
How have you done during the pandemic with your social media?
I mean, it's really taken off. I mean, we were doing Twitter before the pandemic, and in fact, it's been taken on by a guy called Ollie, who's also in the literature department. But we had a Twitter feed for a long time. Before the pandemic, he kind of hijacked it. And as anybody who's seen it, he's got a very distinctive style. But I mean, during the pandemic, it's gone absolutely crazy. We've now got getting on for 34,000 Twitter followers, which for an antiquarian book dealer is just astonishing.
Phenomenal.
And what's been lovely about it is because it's, Twitter is a conversation. And so during lockdown, we had quite a lot of messages, or Ollie had quite a lot of messages from people saying, this has been one of the things that's helped me get through. I look on your Twitter feed every day and it's ridiculous and it's surreal and it's funny and it's been and it's been a real sort of, it's been great support, I think, for people who've read it, but also for us as a company. There are people reading it, responding to it, and it's you do get that sense of community, I think, which is what social media at its best is designed for. It's been sort of revelatory, really. So now coming out of lockdown, we're still going to be going ahead with social media because it just seems to be a way of sort of bringing people together.
I greatly enjoy it. I mean, after scrolling through the Republican-Democratic Civil War, I love stumbling upon one of Henry Sotheran's tweets.
Yeah, and he's presented to the world a really sort of alternative universe where Sotheran is, you know, it's full of dragons and people in Victorian stovepipe hats and whatever, and you know, it's become a world of its own, really. But it's great. I mean, you know, sometimes people even buy stuff. It's you know, it's perfect.
Could we borrow Ollie to do this for a Rare Book Cafe, perhaps?
Well, he's a very busy man.
we could use an Ollie.
Yeah, well, he's got his own style and his own way of looking at things. So yeah.
Maybe it's the British humor. Maybe it's that British wit that attracts us.
I think. I mean, it is very British. I think a lot of the references are very British. So it's nice that, you know, people who aren't from Britain can still sort of get into that and go with it. It's lovely. It's great.
My favorite ones are when you talk about customers or visitors or the people that show up on your doorstep at 6:32 in the evening, 2 minutes past closing.
Yeah, I think anybody who's ever worked in any kind of shop, but yeah, certainly in a bookshop, will recognise a lot of those sort of characters that Ollie talks about. You know, the bookstore customer is a lovely person, but some of them are a bit cranky. And, you know.
Now, if we do have any listeners that are heading to London soon, you are open and taking in guests now?
Yeah, we are open Monday to Friday at the moment. Normal hours, sort of 11 to 6, but you can come a bit early if you make an appointment. But yeah, we're very, very happy to see people. We've had a few American tourists in the last couple of weeks, but I think it's a lot easier for you guys to come to Britain than it is for us to come to the US.
Yeah.
So there are some people who've taken advantage, and we've had a few US visitors, which has been great. You know, to see somebody from over the pond is really refreshing after sort of 18 months of seeing nobody but, you know, my own family in the inside of my house. It's been lovely.
Great. Chris, have you ever slept in the bookstore?
I haven't. I did. I mean, some people have. We had one guy who, on a couple of occasions, couldn't get home and just wrapped himself up in bubble wrap and slept in our sort of cellar area, which sounds incredibly uncomfortable. I have never done that, I'm glad to say. I mean, it's tempting,
I have, because I live in my bookstore.
Well, I do too.
And just to tell our listeners that our executive producer, T. Allen Smith, has asked me to start a little segment about people with homes in their bookstores, and I just sent him a short tour of mine. So keep your eyes open for that, folks. That'll be on a future show as well. A little 10-minute tour of my apartment/bookstore.
And mine, my book room is upstairs at my house, and though we're in the computer room right now, so I'm going to do a tour at some point also. So Ed and I do sleep in our bookstores.
I get kicked out of my bookshop. I have to come home, so sorry.
Chris, I noticed on your LinkedIn page that you're a member of the Linnaean Society. What is that?
Yeah. I mean, that's real honour, actually. The Linnaean Society is one of the world's oldest natural history societies, and a lot of people who join it are proper biologists and scientists, and you know they're elected fellows because of that. And I was very honoured to be elected a member because of my work as a natural history dealer, because they're also interested in the history of the natural sciences. And you know, it's also just around the corner from the shop, so it's somewhere I can pop into and use their library, which is a brilliant library. And I'm now on the collections committee, sort of looking after the collection there. So that it's an absolute pleasure and a real honour. I mean, it's the place where Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace introduced the theory of natural selection to the world. It's got that kind of history to it. So yeah, all of that comes about from being a bookseller. So.
Yeah. Now that was named after, I think his first name was Adolphus Linnaeus, who set up the biological conventional naming system.
Yeah, the binomial system. When he died, a guy called John Smith, who was English, bought his entire estate, including all of his journals, all of his samples, and used that to set up the Linnaean Society to preserve his work and as a as a tribute to him, but also as a way of advancing sort of natural sciences. So Linnaeus is Swedish, and it all ended up in London, which seems kind of weird, but there you go.
You must have some storage. How many books do you think you have, Chris? And I can't imagine they all fit in the store. You must have some storage somewhere.
We've got around. It's around 8,000 at the moment, which it goes up and down.
Not that many.
Yeah, before the pandemic, it was more. Obviously, we've been selling stuff. It's been difficult to buy stuff over the last couple of years because we very much will go on house visits, and you can't do that when you're not allowed in other people's houses. So we've got to work on building up the levels again. But yeah, we get by.
What do you read, Chris? Do you other than natural history? Is there in the fiction world? What do you read?
I read quite sort of Catholic taste, really. I read a lot of new fiction. I like keeping up with new things that come out. Yeah, Zadie Smith. I'm just reading. I'm just about to read the Sally Rooney one when it comes out. That's top of my list because I think she's great. She's a really exciting author. And then occasionally I'll go back to a Thomas Hardy because I like to read one Thomas Hardy a year. I love the Victorian novel, so I'll keep him with that. And I read quite a lot of sort of early 20th century poetry. Some of the more sort of obscure English people that no one else reads.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I read all over the place, and I read non-fiction, I read detective novels, I read whatever. I'll read anything. The back of a cereal packet.
How about the tea bag? Can you see that?
That's Twinings, good Irish breakfast tea. What the devil's
All right, you've
that?
done your reading for the day.
Yeah, I'm exhausted now. Yeah.
Well, we find it encouraging when our grandchildren read the back of cereal boxes. Well, because they're reading.
Yeah.
And signs and things like that.
My daughter doesn't read much, but she reads football magazines or soccer magazines. And that, I think anything that gets people reading is great. Anything that gives you knowledge and fires your imagination that's fine.
Chris, have you ever done a bookstore tour of the U.S.?
I have done. I used to know a bookseller who was working in Massachusetts, and he and I would go off around the sort of New England area. Oh, yeah, and some great bookshops. There's little barns out in the woods and places on high streets, and sometimes just somebody's house. It was an amazing people that you met, and got some really good books out there. So I've done New England a bit. I've done California a little bit, but yeah, it would be lovely to do a road trip over the entire, USA looking at books. I haven't got around to that yet.
Well, I'm lobbying the book industry heavily to find a year that we can set up book fairs and go from east to west or west to east with a book fair every other weekend or every weekend. And in a matter of 6 weeks, we could hit a number of fairs. I think that would be great.
That would be great. That sounds like a great holiday. Yeah.
Perfect holiday.
Well, when the Florida Fair...
Excuse me, Lee, which means vacation for those of you who out there aren't aware.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. When the Florida Fair was in March, there were people who came down the East Coast following about an every 2-week schedule. The one in D.C. was prior to the Florida Fair, and there was something before that. So there was a kind of a progression. People were coming. I know there were dealers from New Hampshire who came in their camper. A couple of years brought their grandchildren with them, during spring holidays to the Florida show, and things like that. So, but that might be a good vacation.
Yeah, book fairs are very convivial places. I could think of much more things
we have missed them a great deal.
Yeah.
New England is opening back up as far as shows go, but here in Georgia, in the South, we're in the middle of an enormous wave of COVID right now.
Oh, okay.
And so we're at home a lot, and shows that normally would have taken place like The Atlanta show over Labor Day weekend, first weekend in September, has not taken place for 2 years. A show in Tennessee has been canceled for 2 years. The Florida show we are hoping will reopen in April. It's been 2 years. 2019 was the last one. And for those of us who don't normally travel cross country to shows, we've really missed this. We've missed this. The online shows have been helpful in terms of not just of sales, but in keeping in touch with people.
Well, I would
no
definitely
substitute though.
I'd sign up for 4 shows in 8 weeks, show every other week, and load up a van and just do some traveling with some vacationing in between. I'm all for it.
That sounds great. I mean, it's like you say, when you've not been able to really move much over the last year and a bit, I mean, the idea of piling up and doing something like that sounds great. We've had no book fairs over here until very recently. There was one in York this weekend, and we've got a big one in London at the end of October. And,
still scheduled, still ready to go live?
Still ready to go, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. So we just canceled the New York
crossed.
fair here.
Yes. I mean, the problem with that, I mean, British dealers couldn't sign up for it because we wouldn't have been allowed in without, however much paperwork. It's just not, it's just not worth people's. Yes, exactly. So that was sad, but New York will be back. We tend to do New York, so we'll be back to that, next year, I hope. Nice visit to the States would be great.
Well, I hope you can make it out to the West Coast. If you do, let me know.
And you're always welcome in Georgia.
I've never been to Georgia.
I have a spare bedroom.
Oh, great! All right, thank you. Never been to Georgia. It looks like a great place.
A lot depends on the time of year.
Okay.
It's beginning to cool off a little. It's in the low 80s right now, but as recently as a week ago, we were well up in the 90s still.
By crikey! Well, okay.
Crikey, mate.
Yeah. I'm British. Firstly, I can say crikey, and secondly, I don't deal with heat in the 90s.
You'll have to wait a few months for that.
I love you guys from the mother country.
Thank you.
Well, we've had a great relationship between the United States and Great Britain. It gets rocky from times, just like some marriages.
Yeah.
Some parents and children. But at the end of the day, we're still brothers.
Exactly. That's what family's like, isn't it? So
brothers on the page.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions from you, Lee?
I don't think so. I answered my main question, which was what were y'all selling back in 1761?
And I didn't know.
Which he doesn't know. But if I should get over your way, I'll certainly come by.
Oh, please do. Always welcome. Please do come and visit.
I did discover a bookseller who had worked for Peter Harrington for a number of years, who happens to be from a town 20 miles from me.
Oh, right.
And she's living in Scotland now because whatever her husband does, he can do from home, and that's where he's from, and they've moved up there. And she specializes in science books, and her name is Laura Massey.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know,
I like Laura. Yeah.
It was really neat to have had this contact with her. Actually, Glenn Mitchell had sent her to me, knowing, how close we were.
Right, yeah.
And she bought a little book from me by a geology professor at Emory, whose classes I had taken when I was in college. And we talked about going fossil hunting at a road cut up north of where she was from, north of Dalton, where she's from. And she said that her parents, when they were courting, would go fossil hunting in that same road cut. So
that is pure romance, isn't it?
I know. It was really neat. But it's, so many coincidences. You don't ever. You always find somebody that you've got something in common with.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that was a connection that would not have been made except for the virtual fairs.
I mean, there you go. I mean, we've been saved a lot of the time through all of this crisis by the internet. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
the human connection always finds a way, doesn't it? And
Right, it does.
It's been the internet this time around. What it would have been like without the internet, I don't know.
Lonely.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, before we shuffle you off, please tell our listeners your webpage and your Twitter handle.
Well, the website is very simply southerans.co.uk, and our Twitter handle is @Southerand, I think.
Oh, that's easy. Even I can
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I had for breakfast. Southerans. With an A, everybody. There's an A in there. Don't miss it.
And there's no U. A lot of people make it into Southerans, which is kind of natural, but there is no U. If you put a U in there, it's all wrong.
What a pleasure, Chris. Thanks for joining us today. You've
Well, thank you for having me.
With your time and your information.
Thank you.
All right. Keep smiling.
I'll try. Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Lee, isn't this so much fun? We've had people on the show from Egypt, from Italy, from all over the U.S. I'm not sure we've had anybody on the show from Asia yet, have we?
I don't think so.
I think we need to give Alan a homework assignment.
I think we do too.
Bring us a Japanese bookseller.
I have a contact in Singapore.
Ooh.
Not with books, but they might know somebody.
All right.
He teaches at Georgia State University in Atlanta remotely, but his wife has some kind of a fellowship or something. She is from there, but she has a fellowship at the university there, and they are currently in Singapore, but are coming back in December, we think. And I wonder if they might have some kind of contact. I could ask.
Let's see if we can track them down. As Chris pointed out, it's all about the human connections.
We could find somebody.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, we already have found somebody, and he's here every week. David Hess from Orange Books in Orange, California. And he's here with things found in old books. Folks, if you've got something that you found in a book that you've picked up, please send an email to us at rarebookcafe@gmail.com or leave us a message on our Facebook page, and we'd love to see what you picked up along the way. But for now, here's David Hess with his weekly segment. Take it away, David.
Hello, this is David Hess from the Bookman in Orange, California. Wishing you a good morning, and this is my segment of Things Found in Old Books. And let's get started. Today, I have this book. It's called Principles and Techniques of Advanced Reading. It's from 1965. And in the book, it maybe came with the book, is this little calculator. And what it is you figure out the words per article, and you set the words per article here, and then you read, and then this will tell you how many words a minute you are reading. And on the back, it's how many words per page are on the book. So this cute little calculator, and now I've tried to figure it out, and I must proclaim ignorance. I can't seem to quite figure it out. But anyway, so if you ever want to know how fast you're reading, this is your boy right here, that 1965 book on advanced reading. I have this book. Darrell Royal Talks Football from 1963. And it's an interesting book all by itself. In the book, I found this delightful little card, All Meat Wieners. And that's the Weenie Mobile. Now, when I was a kid, I used to drive around the neighborhood. You could see the Weenie Mobile. And what it is, it's Meet Little Oscar, the world's smallest chef, and his giant Wienermobile. Compliments of Oscar Mayer and Company. So I think it's just wonderful. It's very nostalgic for me. And I found this card, and I was delighted to have it in a 1963 book. So I can imagine that the book is, or the card is from that era. I don't think they drive the Weenie Mobile around much anymore. Probably retired somewhere. Finally, in this book here, Cheerios. He's a guy who in this book was published in 1900, but it's a later edition. It's the 11th edition, so it was probably originally in the 1800s. And he was some kind of palmist. He studied palms, and they have little pictures of hands and palms all through the book. But in the book itself, back here somewhere, I found a little treasure trove of interesting items. I found hotel stationery. There's a hotel stationery. It's from the Hotel Commodore in Los Angeles, California, and it's very 1930s looking. It's just a blank page. It's cool, and so the guy must have been a collector of sorts for hotel stationery, because here's an envelope from the Hotel San Carlos in Monterey, California. So he was traveling around gathering stationery. And here is the Anderson Hotel in San Luis Obispo, California. Now, I did a little research, and all those hotels are still standing. Two of them are apartment complexes now. And I don't know about the third, but it's still there. I think it's just kind of in disrepair. But so those hotels from the 30s are still standing. And I have this in the same book, this newspaper article, which I found interesting because it's also, it's Dear Miss Dix, D-I-X, Dear Miss Dix. Now, she was the original Dear Abby. I mean, she was preceded Dear Abby. She was a crime reporter for the New York Times in the 1917 and so forth. But she went on to write this column, and it was super popular. And they syndicated it in newspapers all over the land. And so here's a Dear Miss Dix giving advice on somebody's 16-year-old daughter. Okay, so teenagers have always been a problem, I guess. Anyway, so she wrote the advice column through the 20s and 30s. Again, there's no date on the paper, unfortunately, and the other items look kind of 30-ish. So I'm assuming this is probably from the same era, from the 1930s, the Dear Miss Dix column. And finally, in the same book, all of this was collected in one book. Tuesday evening, November 8th, at the City Auditorium on the Pier in Long Beach, California, was this announcement for an event of extraordinary importance. Should companionate marriage, as advocated by Judge Lindsay, be legally recognized? There's a debate by Judge Ben Lindsay of Denver, who's for it, and Reverend R.P. Bob Schuler of Los Angeles, who's against it. It's November 8th. Doesn't say the year, but I did a little research again. And Judge, right there, Judge Lindsay was a very progressive judge, and social causes and things like that. And Reverend R.P. Bob Schuler was a kind of a radio broadcasting minister who was rallying against corruption and politicians and that sort of thing. And in fact, he was banned from the airwaves for a while. So this was a little planned event, and I had never heard of companionate marriage, but apparently it's kind of means like it's okay to live together and without being married, or it's kind of a marriage, but but you don't get married. And so the judge was for that, and the reverend was against it. So that would have been the debate on November 8th in the 30s at some point. And the outcome, we'll never know. But I thought that was very interesting. Anyhow, that's it for today. I want to thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I love doing this, and I'm glad that you're watching. If you have anything that you would like to share, just contact me at oldbook@ebookman.com. Old book, no S, at ebookman.com. And send a picture of what you found and a little description, and I would love to share it on this little program, and it would be an honor, really, to share other people's stuff. I know you guys are finding stuff, especially book dealers. There's got to be a lot of stuff out there, and yeah, even if it's a receipt or an old picture or something, send it along. I'd love to see it, and I'd love to share it. And I want to thank you for stopping by. It's been a pleasure, and I am going to sign off now, and thank you very much. This is David from the Bookman in Orange, California.
All right, thank you, David. Thanks for your weekly segment, Things Found in Old Books, and we seem to be 2 weeks in a row about old hotels, Lee. Last week we had a hotel from Chicago. This week David's found something from a hotel in Southern California. I guess people take their books, sit around a hotel room, pick up some ephemera, stick it in the book as a bookmarker, and eventually David Hess will find it.
Yeah, he'll find it.
All right, now we're live with Richard Mori. Hello, Richard.
Hey, Ed. Hi, Lee.
How are you?
I am great. I've just come off of Brimfield. I've had one of the best events we've ever had. The weather was almost as perfect as one could ever even expect, and the people were all over the place.
Great. Hey, before we get any farther, did you sell that West Point game?
No, I haven't.
Consider it sold. I'll
Okay.
contact you offline, and I'm going to buy it, and I'll tell
All
you where
right.
to ship it to.
Okay, we'll
All
work
right.
that out. Did I hear you're coming to New England?
Well, I'll be in upstate New York in third week of October.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
Not gonna make it all the way up to Massachusetts this trip.
All right. Well, we'll work that detail out.
So you say the people were all over the place, but were they opening up their wallets? Were people buying books?
Ed, let me tell you something. I've been doing Brimfield for 35 years. I have one of the most ideal locations right in the middle of town that I could, if I could sell it, I could get thousands of dollars just for the rights to the place. But it was incredible. It not only was the weather good, but people turned out. But here's the biggest takeaway I'm going to tell you, Ed, and hear me well. I saw more young people at this event than I've ever seen, and 80% of my customers who bought books were younger than 40 years of age.
Wow.
So great to hear that.
That is encouraging.
And I am not exaggerating when I use that number 80 plus.
So encouraging. I tell you what, I go to these book fairs and there's more gray hair than a tabby cat.
Well, not at Brimfield, and they were out in droves, and they were literally walking around in packs of young people together. I mean, there'd be 5 or 6 or 8 young women walking together as a group.
How nice.
Going from show to show, field to field. It
well,
was
in
just
the changing
wonderful.
demographics of the show, have you noticed any change in the items that they're buying?
Yes, this younger group is got some different buying habits. Although I sold some wonderful children's books this weekend. I sold a beautiful Rackham. I sold, of course, I always sell some Alice in Wonderland, but some other lesser known illustrators and authors. But the classics are generally the most popular. And they were buying. I mean, they were opening their wallets, and I don't mean $10 items, Ed. We're talking high 2 numbers and low 3 numbers.
Well, that's good to hear.
That is.
Yeah,
Did you sell the Queen Maria book, the Romanian doll?
No, I have not sold that. It was out on the shelf, but not that. I'm going to probably bring that to Allentown at the end of the month for the Allentown Paper Show, and I think I got a good chance. People would notice it there.
You get around. You've crossed the border from New England and you're heading west.
Well, Allentown, Pennsylvania is out there a little bit. But that later on, I actually in November I go to Columbus, Ohio.
Ooh.
So
You see, Lee, we were talking about getting around to fairs. Somehow Richard figured out
He's
how to
already doing it. Yeah. I would have to travel a long way to do what Richard is doing.
Well,
all right, Richard, I got to ask you a question. I asked Chris this question. Some of us get wrapped up in our jobs and we enjoy it so much researching. Next thing we know, it's 11, 12 o'clock at night. And we're tired and ready to fall asleep. Richard, have you ever spent the night in your van?
Oh, I can't count the number of nights I've done that. But I will tell you this. I do it with a little bit of style. When my van is empty, there's a cot that opens up that's extremely comfortable.
Well, if it's one thing you have, Richard, it's style. You are a one of a kind.
So, but I do like motel rooms. Trust me, there's
every third night.
Something wonderfully convenient about those.
Sounds like you had some pretty good sales at the show this weekend, but did you buy anything?
Oh, Ed, buying was just spectacular. I have some favorites I go to.
We all love to spend money, don't we?
Yeah, it's the best part of the business in my mind. But I saw one of my friends at Brimfield who I haven't seen for 2 years, and he was there for the first time this year, and it was really wonderful. As I walked, I was one of the first person at his booth when the field opened, and as soon as I walked up, he just pointed to 3 boxes and said, "These are for you to look at." And so I had first crack at those 3 boxes, and out of those 3 boxes, I put together almost a whole box of material to buy, plus some other things I bought. And then I went to one of my other new favorite dealers and I bought more of that wonderful stuff from him. So I'm going to show you a couple things, just as teasers. And quite honestly, I haven't even gone through all the boxes to any length of time yet. So you're all probably familiar with Dennison, the company that did office supplies.
Sure.
Well, they're actually an old New England company. They started near Biddeford, Maine in the 1850s. Eventually, they moved to Framingham, Massachusetts, and they become a big company. They have offices in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in New York, and all of that. And they were a great company, and I love to buy their early material. And that piece I showed up is it's a Denison's Goods for Use in Schools, Posters and Projects, one of their catalogs. I'll show you a quick little picture of the catalog itself. It's a
nice catalog.
Oh, it's a beautiful picture. I've never seen this particular catalog before. There's actually
not just items and prices. It's got pictures for back then.
That's right. Oh yeah. They were a very advanced company in their day in terms of marketing and promotion, and there are people who are collecting their products, their old products. So I've got some customers for that. Of course, we all know Andrew Lang. His famous fairy books, the color fairy books. Well, here's a title. Again, I haven't seen this before. This is an unusual Andrew Lang. It's a little later. It's actually, I think, a reprint. And I'm thinking because it is a reprint, it's probably one of the stories. It's called The Prince and the Prigio and Prince Riccardo. Of course, I love the idea of Prince Riccardo.
Quite colorful.
Beautiful picture. Beautiful picture. This is a newer version, but it is a London press, London J.M. Dent and Sons, and it's 1960. What is the date on this? I saw it the other day. 1961. So it is a later reprint, but and again, not everything that we find is expensive to in terms of resale value, but there are just so many different unique things to find out there. You don't have to find expensive items, but when you do find expensive items, you can be very happy. So here's something that I think even our friend Larry would get jealous of. This is Cats at School by Louis Wain. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful copy. The prints in here are just gorgeous. I'll show you one of the first pages.
While you're looking that up, let me remind our viewers, Larry Rakow from Wonderland Books in Cleveland, Ohio, regular contributor to the show.
Yeah. And this is just a beautiful copy of this book, wonderful condition. There aren't very many copies. Matter of fact, I think there was actually only one good copy online. The others had some serious flaws.
Well, put that back up again, because we had a show a couple weeks ago about
Slovenly Peter.
That's
Slovenly
right.
Peter.
I remember
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a list of books published by this company. Which
included their edition of Stroh Peter.
That's correct. And Louis Wain is just very, very desirable. And of course, in the new world, there's nothing like a Maurice Sendak. Well, not only did he do books, of course, he did posters. This is a wonderful card display poster for a countertop. It has the easel in the back, and it was done for the Children's Book Council.
Looks like the Emperor's New
Clothes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a moderately priced piece. It's just wonderful. And of course, my perennial favorite, Alice in Wonderland.
Of course.
And this is just, I haven't had this edition in a long, long time.
Who's the illustrator on that?
Milo Winter. And it's just a gorgeous copy. I'll show you the frontispiece here. We can see the frontispiece.
Alice is beautiful.
What
a beautiful Alice.
Yeah, I just so much enjoy Milo Winter's work, because she did a number of other things. In the cover, is so nice, that Alice sitting there eating a cake, a very unique interpretation of Alice. And that's one of the wonderful things about in this period from the 1910s through the 1930s and 40s. We see literally hundreds of different interpretations of Alice. Milo Winters is just one of them. And she's just so exciting, and this is an edition that's very hard to find. I can't recall the last time I had a copy of this. So those are just some of the teasers. I'll be digging through the box and finding some other things that were exciting. But I also buy just some general stock, like we all have to do.
Sure. Great. Another great show. And this is the last one of the year, or is there one more in October?
It's the last Brimfield of the year, so that we now are looking forward to May. But I'll tell you, this one, I've talked to friends on the field. I know a number of dealers are on the different fields, and I've heard nothing but great success on selling and in buying. It was a phenomenal Brimfield. And next May, I think, will just be over the top.
Great. We're all glad to hear about the return of the book business.
Yep. And of course, I'm still looking forward to getting to that book fair in Florida. I just love that. And I've talked to friends who are waiting to go.
I'm certainly waiting.
It sounds like I'm going to have to make a trip down there as a buyer.
You may have to. You'd love it.
You're gonna have to, Ed. No, Ed, don't come. You would have to. you'd just be taking product away from us, some of us who want to buy. So you stay home so we can buy, okay?
All right. Always a pleasure, Richard. I'm going to be getting in touch with you offline to buy that West Point
All
game
right.
that you showed last week, and we're not
Yep.
waiting until May to hear from you. We're going to hear from you at least come Allentown show.
Oh, for sure you will.
Thanks a million, Richard. And Lee, I know we both like to spend some money out there. Lee, do you ever do any buying at auctions, online auctions?
Yeah, I do. In fact, Saturday.
What's your experience been?
Mixed. A lot depends on how brave I feel and how high I'm willing to go. This past Saturday, Addison Sarova here in Georgia had an auction, and I've had good luck with stuff from them, particularly Southern and Georgia related items in the past. And they're really nice to deal with. And I had bid in advance on about 10 different items. Not a whole lot of money total, but some interesting pieces, including a catalog from the 30s from Georgia Marble Company, which is, not that far from here. Wound up getting, of the 10 items, one.
Oh.
$10 plus
Oh,
premium plus shipping, but sometimes that happens.
Lee, this might make a good segment for the show, book buying at auctions.
Right.
I have had very mixed results too. One of the problems, of course, is that you get so emotional.
Right.
You see something and you want it, you have to have it, and you start bidding, and you forget all about the 25% buyer's premium.
Oh, yeah. And then shipping and then handling that's added on top of the shipping, and insurance that's added on top of the shipping and handling. And
let me caution our visitors out there, be cautious when buying a framed item.
Oh, gosh.
Auction.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I sell a fair number of framed items because of music related posters, photos, signed photos, things like that. And frequently I will suggest to a buyer, let me unframe it and send it to you. I'll give you credit for the frame. I'll unframe it and send it to you without the frame.
Yeah. That's often very best.
Which is sometimes the best, but for shows, you want them presented, nicely. So,
what I've kind of boiled my experience down to is figure out what you want to spend on the book, put in your bid, and walk away.
Right.
If you win it, congratulations. If you don't, then you didn't spend more than you wanted to.
Well, I did that. I had started bidding on that really about 10 days ago, and went back in Friday and upped some bids to what I was willing to pay. Though a few things I did go back in and follow and bid a little bit more than probably I should have. But and a couple of things were just like, one was a really nice binding of a book that I wanted to buy for a friend. It was a favorite of his, and it was just a really pretty binding. And but I didn't get it either. So sorry about that.
This is a good suggestion for our executive producer, T. Allen Smith, to bring us a guest from an auction company, somebody who can give us some what's going on behind the scenes. Of course, all we see is what's on the screen.
Right.
You never really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I have been wanting, though I'm not going to try to do it right now, but the last thing I bought from Addison Sarova was a copy of the Underground Railroad. Yeah, really nice copy. And we were trying to get it here in time for Florida in 2020, and so what? And when I wrote to them to say, I'm really trying to get it here by a certain date, and can you do this? And he wrote back and said, sure, we'll make it happen. And they have moved to Social Circle, Georgia, which is this charming little town east of Atlanta, out kind of off I-20 out that direction, and said, when you have time, the next time you win something, why don't you come pick it up and see our new place and everything. Sure. I don't think it's worth it for a $20 item right now. Right. but I would like to go over there sometime. And
I think it would make a great segment. Just between the two of us, I'm sure we could share with our listeners a lot of do's and don'ts.
We could. And one of their, they're a fairly small operation, and one of their folks might be very willing to come on.
Sure. Or maybe Pacific. I'll give Pacific Book Auctions a call. They might PBA.
PBA might, yeah. I've bought through PBA and I've sold through PBA.
Mm-hmm. Oh, have you?
Yes.
I've never put any of my items in an auction house. What's that experience like?
Interesting. You send them a list. They assign somebody to you, that's your contact. And they look at the list and let you know which items they think they would like to auction.
Okay.
You can't just send them anything.
Right.
And then they will place a price range on it. And if you don't like that, then you can negotiate a little bit with them. But
can you negotiate on the starting price?
You might have a little, if there's something about the book that they have missed, some reason, and it may be a book that they're not that familiar with, because some of the things that I have put have been more Southern oriented. For example, I have at one point put, I can't remember what it was, whether it was the Cherokee Land Lottery or something, and they just felt like that it wouldn't sell. But then I sold it through another avenue for the full asking price to an institution.
Good for you.
So you just don't know. But they're pleasant to deal with. They're good about communicating. You get your money pretty fast, in a couple of weeks, actually. And I have had listed things with them, I think, 3 times. And not everything sold, but if you've got things that you've had forever, and what you'd like to do is get rid of them, then something like that is a good option. And sometimes it'll surprise you.
Yeah.
And you'll get more than you thought you would.
Let's put that on the list for a future show.
Yeah. I had a copy of Second American edition of Taipei.
Ooh.
And I had it. We had bought it from a lady in Atlanta whose husband had been a book reviewer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, though it didn't have anything to do with with his job. And I had taken it to book shows, had it online, just couldn't get rid of it. I had a local customer here who was kind of interested in it for her son, but she changed her mind about it. I had offered it to her at a really good price and wound up putting it on PBA and sold it for more than I had offered it to her for. So that was good. That was a good outcome. So it's it's a mixed bag, but still it is another way, especially if you've had things that you just feel like, well, it's never going to go. I might as well get what I can out of it.
Right.
Their percentage is 17%.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Which I don't think is too bad.
But remember, they're getting 17% from you and
25%. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. But still, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Well, that's their business motto, and if that's what works for them.
Right. Yeah. It certainly beats 30%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But Lee, we're here to talk with you today about the list.
The list.
How's the list coming?
Well, as you said, it's coming, like a leaky faucet, drip by drip. I did, after, personal emails to a couple of folks yesterday, get 2 more in the bag. And I've still got a couple that 3 or 4 I'm waiting for. But I figure one more round is going to do this, and then I'm going to compile a list of probably about the top 15 or so.
Okay.
And I can already tell where it's going, from what I've got in, yes. But this week, we'll start with this. And you're still going to notice a lot of Southern writers, though Janice Ray, who is from Baxley, Georgia. Baxley is about 95 miles southeast of Savannah. It's
wait, I thought the Atlantic Ocean was southeast of Atlanta.
Well, not exactly. That's more like
okay. Maybe southeast of Savannah, maybe.
Southeast of Savannah. I mean,
Okay.
southwest of Savannah. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, you've all heard probably a lot of you have heard the phrase a Georgia cracker.
Yeah.
And you've probably thought that meant what was referred to as poor white trash. That's not where the term comes from. The term Georgia cracker actually refers to descendants of original crackers who were people who migrated to Georgia, primarily the coastal area in the mid-1800s, and worked in the pine forest, destroyed the longleaf pine forest, actually. This was in South Georgia, middle Georgia.
Logging. Destroyed it through logging?
Right, through logging and through tapping the pine trees, for turpentine.
Oh, okay.
And so the pine ecosystem had pretty much disappeared by the time Janice came around. But she lived in a very dysfunctional family, I think, to put it mildly.
We all live in a dysfunctional family.
Oh yeah, her father owned a junkyard, but he was very interested in nature. So how do you do those two? There's a lot of mental illness in the family. He was a Bible thumping Pentecostal, very restrictive to his children. What she wanted was out, and she got out. She went to North Georgia College up in Dahlonega to start with, and then transferred. I can't remember where she transferred to, but anyway, she has become not only a writer but an environmentalist. And this was her first book, which is an autobiographical thing, and it is it's beautifully written and fascinating look at the lifestyle and at the ecological issues caused by what happened to the land, in Georgia, and is just it's really really a good book. And I have a nice a friend of mine met her and got me a nice autographed copy of it. But it was not on my personal list, but when it appeared on this list, I thought, well, that's a good selection. That's really a good selection.
Well, I have heard it said that all first novels are autobiographical, and
Well,
it's
that
nice
may
to
be.
see one that makes it to publication.
Yeah, and she has been a finalist for the Pulitzer and has won a number of awards over the years, and is still writing. This was a fairly early. This was from, I want to say, 96, and she's still writing, and she's still writing. She writes poetry as well, but she's still writing on environmental issues. So that is a good selection. Okay, we'll do Macbeth next. One person.
Shh! Don't say that word.
One person listed the Scottish play, and I think a number of people in the book club, rather than reading it, a lot of them had read it, in college or high school or whatever, watched the Kenneth Branagh version of it, and my husband said that when he was a baby, his mother was a school teacher, and that she would recite the witches scene, to him when he was a baby. He told this to his English students all the time. Whether there was any truth to it or not, I'm not real sure. I never could get his mama to really confirm that this was the case, but this was the story, and that it was that she would recite the witches scene from the opening to him. But I was so glad to see that this appeared on somebody's list, because we had a discussion right at the start of the pandemic about doing Hamlet online as a book club, and that never did get off the ground. So I was glad to see this appear, and I have little skulls that are mechanical that my grandchildren play with, from Macbeth. I mean, no, that's from
It's
Hamlet.
been
I'm sorry.
400 plus years. It's good to see Shakespeare
Still,
still on the top 10.
yeah, we still do. All righty, nickeled and dimed.
Oh, I read this one.
Did you?
Yeah.
What'd you think of it?
I think there's not enough writing about the social ills in our country. And
But there's a good bit. There is a good bit. We read for a while there several things, and I've read some stuff since then. But Barbara Ehrenreich toured the country taking menial jobs. Taking whatever she could get. And we're talking about a period of time when a lot of jobs were $6 an hour or so, and it is really interesting. It'd be interesting to see if things have changed any. I don't know that they have.
I think they have. I think that coming out of this pandemic, small restaurants have figured out that, hey, I have to pay my people a living wage and not let them rely on just tips.
That would be interesting. But it's, however, there are jobs around here that are not being filled, even though we're paying a little bit better these days.
Yeah,
people are not going back to work. But she worked as a waitress, a hotel maid, a cleaning woman, a nursing home aide, and a Walmart sales clerk. And she lived in trailer parks, residential motels, and we have those around here. And she discovered that no job is really unskilled. That there are specific skills associated with every job.
Sure.
Even if it's stocking grocery shelves, there are specific skills associated with that. And it's a look at a portion of the country that a lot of us don't think about, even though we may see it because we drive through the Burger King or we shop at Walmart or we have family who are in nursing homes and we see the aides there and things like that.
Prayerfully, you and I aren't living it, but we know that there are many out there who are.
And the book club is going to be reading Nomadland, which is another look at
Academy Award-winning film from last year.
Yes, which is another look at this same problem of people living in RVs, going from job to job, for very low wages. So that's.
I think we need to get a few congressmen to read that book.
Yeah, I think we probably do. Yeah, send them on a trip like that.
Yeah, exactly.
2 people had listed the Poisonwood Bible.
Unskilled labor.
Yeah. Of course, Barbara Kingsolver is very well known, and the Poisonwood Bible is about a missionary family, and it is fictional, though events that were going on in the Congo at the time of that the novel is set in, were actually happening, but the book itself is fictional. These are not real, these are not real people. About a missionary family who moved to the Congo, and the father of the family. The name of the book, There's a Poisonwood Tree, but at the end of his sermons, he would quote from the Bible that was supposed to be, Jesus is most precious, but in the native dialect, it came out as Jesus is poisonwood, and so that was where the title of the book came from. And he was, I think, probably a little bit like Janice Ray's father, very repressive. He and his wife had 4 daughters, and what he said went. And even though the women are the main characters in the book, and it's told first person by all 5 of the women, and what happens to them, over the years. The youngest child is bitten by a snake and dies. It's an interesting book. It didn't really make my favorite list, I think partly there's a lot of kind of, I guess, allegorical references and stuff that I found, and I know one reviewer thought was a little heavy-handed, really stretching things a little bit. But she writes well, and the women in it. I said last week that we'd kind of gotten on a women in literature kick for a while, and strong women in literature, and the mother always felt guilty that she had allowed, though she didn't really have a choice, her husband to move the family to Africa and to undergo all the trials and tribulations that they did, and that it's only toward the end that she feels like, maybe she wasn't her fault, that she could not have helped it, but it's told through all the women in the family, not really through the father, and several people really did enjoy that a lot. So let's see what we have next. Yes, now this is one of my favorites. This was kind of where we came into the book club, because Bob had taken his students to snake handling churches, and they did an article on snake handling for a school magazine. And then when he was at Georgia, my older son visited one of the churches several weeks in a row and did a photojournalism assignment for a class when he was a senior at Georgia. And so we never handled any snakes. I want that understood.
Did your son?
No, he did not. His dad told him before he left to go to this church, which is not far from Calhoun. He came home for the weekend and would go to Kingston. Sit in the back and don't handle any snakes. Well, he got there early to interview the pastor, who plopped him down in the front row, and he stayed there through the whole time, but he didn't handle any snakes.
Good.
Dennis Covington started this as a very neutral journalism project, covering the trial of Glenn Summerford, who was accused of murdering his wife by insisting that she put her hand in boxes of snakes. Okay. Sounds like murder to me. He was acquitted, however. But Covington got very involved with the congregation. He began to care very much for their beliefs, to look in his own family's past, and it became a kind of a journey of self-discovery for him. And he actually began to feel some concern for Summerford himself. It's a really, really interesting journey that he went on. And of course, snake handling, while it is not legal, still goes on, not to the extent that it used to around here. But I'm kind of in the middle of what was a hotbed of snake handling church,es
I can imagine.
And not just here, but in Tennessee, in Kentucky, in West Virginia. We talked some about this with Mary Kay several months ago. But anyway, this was a favorite book. One of the book club members at that time was from Kentucky, and her family belonged to a snake handling church.
I'm kind of curious that snake handling would be made illegal. There would be laws passed against snake handling from a couple of aspects. One is, freedom to do, but also from a religious standpoint, it seems like it'd be interfering with a person's religion.
Well, that is a point. And I think some of it came from the fact that people were encouraged to do this and would get into a frenzy about it. And if you could see some of the videos of actual services or pictures of services, it's kind of like they've entered another dimension.
Right.
And are
trance-like.
Yeah, almost. And that people are not taking precautions, and that they are then refusing medical treatment, if they are bitten. Been a lot of deaths in that those religions, a lot of them. But Sand Mountain is in Alabama. It's not very far from here. It's over in northeastern Alabama. And it's a fascinating book. It really is. And there have been a number of books about snake handling. In fact, I sold 3 different ones to one customer a few weeks ago and sent him a copy. I made a copy of my son's article from University of Georgia to include with it. So this was a popular book, a book we've talked about a lot, even if it didn't appear on people's favorites list. It was a book that made a real impression on a lot of people.
Well, I look forward to hearing from some of our listeners who decide that it's for them.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't know that you will. Okay, we're back to another Southern regional writer, Judson Mitchum. The Sweet Everlasting is the story of a man who winds up in prison, who loses his wife and son because of his activities. He feels that he brought ruin upon his family, and he is reflecting upon his past in the book. And he's 74 at the time that the book starts. He's thinking back on everything that's happened, on his boyhood, on his time in prison, on what happened when he came out of prison, on the fact that his wife and son left him because of this. And it's a story of, in a way, a story of redemption and of how he comes to terms with some of this. And it's beautifully written. I'm a big Judson Mitchum fan. He also wrote a book called Sabbath Creek that's a coming of age story. And he is a poet as well. He came up to our Friends of the Library annual meeting. We have a author every year, and he came up and read mostly poetry to us for that. And one Friday afternoon, several of us braved Atlanta 5 o'clock traffic to hear him at the Margaret Mitchell House in downtown Atlanta, a house that she and her husband owned. And he's just a joy to read, and so I recommend any of his books.
That reminds me, Lee, I want to throw a hello out there to Warren Dufour, who's with the Friends of the Library in New Orleans, and I miss talking to Warren. Hey, Warren, how you doing out there? Friends of the Library is a wonderful organization if anybody's looking for a place to volunteer.
Ours is having a book sale next weekend, and I'll go. Don't find a lot. Most of the things that wind up in the book sale are either library discards or, book club editions that people have gotten rid of. But you never know. You never know. So we have one more, and this is one of my favorites. It's set in the Ozarks. And it was made into a movie out as well, starring Jennifer Lawrence, and it's a wonderful movie. The book is even better. It is
always is
Ozark Gothic at its best. Ree Dolly, played by Jennifer Lawrence in the movie, is the teenage daughter of a guy who gets imprisoned for cooking meth. He puts the house up as bail and then disappears. And so she has 2 brothers. In the movie, it's a brother and a sister, but she has 2 brothers. She has a mother with mental problems who's almost catatonic that she takes care of. And if she can't find her father, she stands to lose the house. The title at the beginning of the book is a scene of venison hanging from trees, chilling in the winter air.
Very sensual.
Yeah, the theory is that it would decay a little bit, but it makes it sweeter at the bone. And so the title comes from that, and it's a really amazing scene. It's a family with mental illness, with criminal activity, with abusiveness. It's a wonder she survives. It really is. She is attacked by a group of other women. She has been sexually abused. It is, but it is the sense of place is just amazing, and you hate to think that there might be areas out there, like there, but it gives you the feeling of being there. And I read the book before I saw the movie, but the movie is very, there's some differences in it, of course, but the language of the movie is very close to the to the written language. And I won't tell you how she manages to save the house.
I won't ask.
But she does, and it's fairly gruesome. But it is on my favorite list. So.
All right, we need to ask Alan to put this list in writing up on our Facebook page so people can refer back.
I will, after next week, compile a list, and we can put that on Facebook.
Great, good plan. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for sharing that. Our listeners are going to have some wonderful books to look out for.
Well, I hope so. And then we start back. We have a meeting on the 26th, reading Robert E. Lee and Me, and that should give us some interesting conversations.
Excellent.
In today's climate.
Well, Lee, it's almost that time to say goodbye. I'd just like to say see you later to our listeners out there. I'm going to be gone for a few weeks, and if I'm able to, I will call in from the road or send in dispatches as I happen to come across things literary and book world as I'm traveling. But Lee, you're in charge. I'm
going to miss you. I am really going to miss you.
I dubbed thee Lee in charge.
But we'll do our best.
You always do. Next week, we're going to have with us Gigi Best from the Best Richardson African Diaspora Cultural and Literature Museum, now in St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city, and we're looking forward to having Gigi back with us.
I'll have to put the name of it up in front of me so I'll get it right. I know that's been a challenge.
She sells seashells at the seashore. It certainly taxes my linguistic capabilities. All right, folks, that's it. That's all we have. Thank you for joining the Rare Book Cafe. Please send us your favorite books, and Lee can give us a comment on them or perhaps share them with her own book club. And if you've got questions, send them to us on Facebook or send us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com. And now we're going to roll the credits with our end of show music. Take care, Lee.
All right. Have a good trip.
Keep smiling, everybody.